Here okay? Yep, great. So we're going to get started. We just wanted to use a couple of minutes because we're redirecting some people. The other room was not really prepared and kind of warm, so. This is being videotaped, so you get to watch it again as many times as you wish. My name is Karen Murphy. I'm one of the high school counselors. This is Amy Knapp, and who else is joining us? Candace Galarno and Ashley Kaplan. So we have those groups here tonight. All right, so we're going to get started. Hopefully you have a packet. This is a packet that we're actually handing out to students. So if we've already met with students, then they have the packet, but we have extras for you to use for tonight. If we haven't met with your child yet, which we just got started kind of this week, if they can bring it when they come and meet with their counselor, that would be ideal. If not, that's fine. Like I said, we have extras. So let's begin on the front page. And as Amy is settling with handing out things, she'll come back and get things on the screen so we're following along. But the front page obviously is our 12th grade calendar of events. So tonight, obviously, we're meeting tonight. And you can see where it says September through November, counselors are meeting individually with their seniors, and we're going over all of this stuff and kind of meeting students where they're at. So if they have, 90% of their stuff done, great. We pick up where they are and move forward. If we have students who, were really busy and couldn't get things started, we pick up where they are and we move forward. So wherever the student is, we kind of address what needs to get done, and then we just, we plan accordingly. You will take note that there's a couple of college fairs coming up, one at Hudson Valley, which is nice, and then there's certainly the one here at the high school. And this fall is going to be in the East Gym because we have a sporting event in the West Gym. So a little bit of a change of venue. Same time frame, 6:30 to 8, and it's, we have actually on the way out, we have a hard copy of a list of colleges that will be attending our both. Oh, you got both.
It's a front to back document. One side, so you have to look carefully because one side is Hudson Valley and one side is us, and it's 2 nights apart, and the colleges are not identical.
Okay.
So it's online. I can show you where that is also. But if you want a hard copy, we have it for you.
Great. What else do we have? We have our high school open house coming up. Last time for you guys to do that for your children. We also we have our first scheduled event on October 3rd. It's something that we thought might be useful to families and students to help sit down and individually help with the college application, if needed. So we have from 4 to 7. We're going to have we'll be sending something out shortly about signing up for a time slot. My guess is that all 6 of us will be there, but if not, most of us will be there, and then we can just kind of, help as needed. So that will be available. There will be a virtual financial aid evening program. It says to be determined for the date, but it's actually October 16th, and again, we'll be sending out a communication for that. One of the things that we've been doing for a really long time is the Instant Admit Day. It's a very popular, well-received, great program for students. It's for students only. Parents don't come to that. It's during the day. And we have a number of colleges, you can see there, that participate. And basically what we have is we have students who are interested in applying to any of those colleges. They sit with us. They fill out the applications ahead of time. And then we schedule them a time slot where they meet with those individual admissions counselors from the particular colleges. So if they fill out 3 applications, Hudson Valley, SCC, the College of St. Rose, or whatever combination, Those are the 3 admissions counselors that they meet with, and the colleges, they let the student know that on the spot after their brief meeting, it's about 15 minutes or so, if the student has been accepted, which is really kind of nice. These are free applications, so the student doesn't, and you don't pay for the application fee, and it's just kind of like a nice way to get things started if, early on in the year. The only exception to that is the SUNY Albany admissions people. When they come in, they're basically doing what's called a transcript review. So students, you still have to fill out the SUNY application or the common application for the SUNY, to apply to SUNY, but they'll do a transcript review and they'll make, suggestions. Oh, you really should apply, or maybe you should take your SATs again, or we'll need your first quarter grades. There'll be some kind of update as to if they need more information.
Did you say that these were links?
I did not. Sure. So everything that's on the website is a link, anything that's obviously highlighted or underlined. So if you go on to the website, you can link to those applications and other resources that are there. All right, so I'm going to be asking Amy some questions because I don't have all the answers, even though there's 50 years experience right here, or plus. Anyway, so financial aid this year, it's different. What's different about it?
Okay, so financial aid, some of it is the same. If you're applying to private schools that require the CSS profile, you can still start filling that out October 1st. But the FAFSA is changing. They do not have anything out yet. You will not be able to complete that until it becomes available. They're saying December right now. The last time they changed it, it was actually a little delayed, so I'm hoping it will be December. And we are actually doing 2 different financial aid programs because of this change this year. So on October 16th, we're going to do a virtual program, which we will record, as long as we can figure out how to do it, that you will be able to look at afterwards. The person who is presenting is coming back from a huge, I think it's a national financial aid workshop, so she should have all of the up-to-date information on the FAFSA at that point. You still can't fill it out then, though. So we are doing another in-person evening program in January. The same person will be presenting, but she will be able to more walk you through what the actual FAFSA looks like and how to fill it out.
Thank you. My pleasure. Okay. So let's see, moving on. One of the things that we try to encourage parents and students to do is to go to the high school website and click on the Counseling Center, which is down below, and then it leads you to, oh, you're going to do that?
I'm going to do it.
Nice.
I'm going to try to do it.
We're going to try to do that. So it's a little bit of a lot of clicks there, but basically we want students and parents to be monitoring the scholarships that are available. And you kind of get in the habit of doing that regularly because we actually have, by month, what scholarships are available. So all of the September ones, all of October and November, and so on and so forth throughout the year. Something that you might notice when you log in and you click on those, you might see actually old dates, so last year's dates. Please don't be discouraged by that. A lot of times, we just didn't get the updated information, but the links tend to be correct and with the actual dates that they're due for 2023, 2024. So just kind of pay attention to that. What else do we have?
Also, we are trying to keep Naviance updated as well. And Naviance, you can search it a little bit more easily, so that if you're having a hard time navigating our website, our goal was to move everything over to Naviance, but I know sometimes Naviance is hard to access. If anybody's tried recently, your single sign-on is not currently working. We're trying to resolve that. If you want to get into Naviance, if students want to get into Naviance and they can't, please email your counselor. We can send you a temporary password, and then you can log in using your email and your password. If parents want access to Naviance, you can also email your counselor, and we can send you a temporary password where you can log on as well. But in Naviance, it's easier to kind of search scholarships by category rather than scrolling through what's there.
Thank you. Then there's a couple other items there. We have junior, senior awards, that's by invitation, so we do that towards the end of the school year in May. And then finally, graduation, June 26th. And you can see at the bottom of the calendar there are the test days for SATs and ACTs, so if your child wishes to take them again, those are the registration deadlines. You want to pay attention to those so you don't have to pay any late fees. And please note that there are some tests that are not available at Guilderland, so you'll have to go to another local high school if it's not available at Guilderland. One of the things you might want to think about, and I'm speaking to you seniors out there, is it might be worth your time and certainly worth your parents' pocketbook if you study for a test and try to get to that either, increase your score, because it could equate to some merit-based money from the college, because a lot of colleges now are saying test optional, not required, whatever they might be saying, for admissions purposes, but in terms of merit-based scholarships, they might, they'll often take a score, and it might lead to some money there. So something to think about. Might be worth the $50 or $60 to retake a test. I know that's not really something you would like to hear, but that's it. It could turn out that way. So the next page, applying for admission, the pink page in your packet, it's basically just kind of like an overview of the things that we're hitting on. So there's just some basic information. I'm gonna come back to some things. One of the things that's on there at the bottom, activities resume on Naviance. So our seniors have been working over the years since 9th grade, 10th grade, thereabouts, of updating and adding their activities in Naviance. It's just a great hub to have everything there. It would be really lovely if Naviance and Common App activities resume could somehow match. They don't, right? Sadly, they don't. But at least it's in one location, so that way when you are adding your activities on your Common application or any other college application, it's all right there, and you can just kind of, copy what's there and put it on the application. You also want to update the resume, because teachers might be asking for your resume if you've asked them for a letter of recommendation. And they might say, hey, can you send me your resume just so I have a sense of what else you participate in. And we need it, actually, so it's very helpful. Counselors need it as well. What else do we have? Okay, so let me just, let's see, what else is on here? Okay, I'm just going to skip some of that stuff. It's not that I'm not talking about it. I'm just going to talk about it at a different time. So the next yellow form that we have here is a summary of information from the SUNY system. The reason why we include it in the packet, we're not trying to push SUNY, but SUNY produces this, and so we provide it to students and parents. It's got a lot of useful information with the four-year colleges and the technical colleges, the university centers. It gives students and parents an idea of, all right, grade point average range that they're looking for, SAT or ACT range. Now, again, a lot of these schools are test optional. They still put the ranges in, so you just kind of have a sense. So if the student took an SAT or an ACT, it's within the range or exceeds the range, I would recommend that you would submit that score, because that will help your application. If it's a test optional school or they don't require testing and your score happens to be below that range, I would say don't submit that score, because it's not really going to help your application. So that's just some of that general information that you see from the SUNY system, but you also will get that from the private colleges as well on their websites, or when you visit, it should be there as well. So something to look out for.
Can you mention that the housing information is there for the community college?
Sure. So on the admissions information summary, community colleges, there's one side is the is the four-year college information. The other side is the community college information. What's something to note there is the student housing, because not all community colleges have housing, and many of them actually are having housing on their campus because they're finding that students tend to be a little bit more successful when they're right there and they stay. So as you can see with student housing, there's quite a bit. So that's something to keep note of. And we have probably, God bless you, anywhere between, I don't know, 22 to 25% of our students every year who start out at a 2-year community college with the intention of many of them transferring on to a 4-year school. So it's a great option for a lot of students. Okay, so the next, the gray pages is that, are the pages that address financial aid. And we know we're kind of waiting for some of it. So the CSS profile, you can see, is a part of College Board. It's a product of College Board. So when your child registers for the SAT, there's a button for the CSS profile, and that has to be done for some colleges. Not all colleges require the CSS profile. All colleges will require the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, if you are seeking financial aid. If you're not seeking financial aid, then you don't have to fill out those forms. A lot of times colleges still recommend families who think that they may not qualify for financial aid to still submit financial aid forms, because colleges receive what's called institutional aid, and they can decide how they wish to use it. So they only typically award students who have, and families who have completed these forms. So it's not a guarantee that somebody will get a grant or any kind of merit-type based money tied to financial aid if you don't particularly qualify, but it's up to the college to determine that. So it might be worth your while to still, submit those forms. Yeah, go ahead.
Most importantly, when you look at this form online, everything that's not black is actually a link to those things. So we gave it to you in paper, but when you pull it up online, you can click on the link and go directly to the link for whatever scholarship that is, or the CSS profile, or the FAFSA, or whatever it is you're looking for. Also, there are some colleges that when they want to give out merit aid, meaning they want to give you money to come there because they like you, they still need you to fill out the FAFSA. I don't know exactly why, I don't understand that piece of it, but I have heard many students say that. So if a college wants to offer you money and you weren't planning on doing the FAFSA, check with them to find out if you need to do that anyway, because I would hate for you to think that you're getting this $10,000 scholarship and you show up in August and they're like, oh no, you never finished the FAFSA, you can't do that. So just double check with the colleges, even if you're getting non-need-based aid from them. Thank you.
Right, sure. So there's quite a few, as you scroll down to the next page, there's quite a few links, there's a lot of information. This is usually part of the presentation where the students' eyes glaze over because they have no idea what all of this means, and I totally get it. You don't have to, for students, you don't have to understand everything. I think you want to have a general concept of what financial aid is, what a student loan is. A loan is something that you will eventually have to pay back. Anything that says grant is something that is gifted to you and you don't have to pay back. So these are some terms that you just want to generally become familiar with. I remember way back when, sitting in the financial aid office, signing my name to a loan, not really knowing what I was signing for, but did it and everything worked out. So these are just generally things parents tend to have a little bit of better understanding. So, but just, you want to have some general knowledge about that and parents more specific knowledge. Oh, and by the way, if anybody has a question, please raise your hand. I'll just repeat the question so it can be heard, and then we'll answer it. So, okay. next page is the green checklist, the senior checklist. And this is for students and families, parents to just use to, hey, am I organized? Did I do this? It's easy to kind of miss a few steps here and there along the way. We get it. There's a lot going on. You're very busy. So this, not all of this is something that you have to do, but there's, most of it you have to do. So just kind of go through and check things off. One of the things that hopefully all students have done, and if you haven't, it's okay, but you want to do this soon, is if you haven't asked a teacher for a letter of recommendation last year, at the end of last school year, then you want to take care of that business soon. I would say this week, early next week, because some teachers have actually said, oh, I'm full, I'm not writing any more letters of recommendation. They only have so many that they do. So that's just something that you want to pay attention to. Not all colleges even require letters of recommendation from a teacher, but some do. Sometimes you only need one. And you don't need 3 or 4. If a college says, oh, we'll take 3 or 4 or 5, you don't need 3, 4, or 5. Really, you only need 1. Sometimes you need 2. It depends on the college. And when the student meets with the counselor, we'll go through all that. We'll kind of like look through Naviance where it shows what each college is asking for. So we'll have a better idea with that. Okay. One of the things that is on that green sheet, the checklist, so some colleges, not very many, but some will actually host interviews. So it tends to be optional for the interview, and this is something you want to see in the admissions information if it's something that's offered. Many colleges don't have the staff to provide an interview, but there are some smaller schools that will. So it's not necessarily going to be the thing that gets somebody into college, but it's added information for the admissions counselor, and it often is pretty helpful. And then people who have who are majoring in the arts, so for the performing arts, there's usually an audition that also has to be done. So the student's not only being evaluated academically with an application, but then they have to do, either an art portfolio or a dance audition or a musical audition. Yes, an audition. All right, I didn't know if there's like another specialized term. Yeah, audition. So that's something that you just want to pay attention to. Obviously, that doesn't apply to everybody. It just applies to some students. Okay, next page. So this is when we are sitting with students. This is when, as the counselor, if I'm sitting with students, I tend to break off this last part. You don't have to do that because the next few pages are pages that are either going to return to the counselor or it's going to be given to the teacher. So I'll just quickly go over what's here, and then we'll talk about some other things that's on my lesson plan. So the parent brag sheet, we ask parents, if available, to fill out a brag sheet for their child, and this is information that's given to the counselor, and we use what parents have said. We don't use every word of what parents say, but we kind of weave in what parents have shared, and we use discernment and wisdom. So if it applies and it makes sense and kind of goes with other things that that fits with what we're talking about, then we'll add that in, and it's only for our eyes. It doesn't go anywhere else, and so that's helpful. We know parents are busy. We are still capable of writing a letter of recommendation without the parent brag sheet, so, but it's helpful when available. Yep.
So if your handwriting looks like mine and it's illegible sometimes even to me, you can just pull it up online, make a copy, fill it out, print it out, send it to me, whatever you want to do. The only thing I will say is sometimes parents end up sharing it under some other program, and I can't open it. So that if you can share it as a Google Doc, great. If you can attach it as just a regular PDF, great. Or you might be better off printing it out and sending it in if you can. But all you have to do is make a copy of it. It's a Google sheet. So. Okay.
And I've had parents email, basically, similar information. If that's easy for you, that's fine too. Okay, so these next, oh, there we go. So the purple sheet, senior reflection, is for the student. And again, this is filled out by the student. It's given to the counselor, it's given to us. And this is information that the student wishes us to share in our letter of recommendation. So, we ask them to be generous with, the information that they share. And again, we don't use every word of what students write, but I think it's nice to hear the student voice, and we try to incorporate that into our letter of recommendation. Very helpful.
This is something else.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I will ask, I'm showing how to do this. Students, if you're going to make a copy of this and then share it with me, great. If you're doing it that way, terrific. I can change the page color. But if you are doing it and sending it to me as a PDF, please change the page color before you send it. We don't have a color copier, and it just comes out so gray that I often can't read what's behind it. So if you would change the page color to white. We refer to it as the purple sheet, so we wanted it online in purple. And if you have questions about how to do that, just stop in and ask, and we can show you. It's very simple. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So the next page is this yellow transcript, scholarship, confidential counselor recommendation request form. Boy, that's a mouthful there. And basically what this is, so when the student and the parents sit down at home and they're filling out their application and everything is done, and this whole process is deadline driven. So you really have to know what the deadlines are. Every college doesn't have the same application deadline, so that's something that you want to pay attention to. And this is actually a very useful form because students are going to write the name of the college that they're applying to, and they're going to indicate the deadline there on the left, and then they're going to check off the appropriate things. So make sure that their application information, the colleges are in Naviance, and then most students are able to use the Common Application. The Common Application is used by hundreds of colleges, but there are some that don't use it. If that's the case, that next little checkoff box where it says eDocs applications is what students can use, or the SUNY application. So, and then it gets other stuff, and if you're not sure what that is, that's okay, you can leave it blank. We'll figure it out. But basically, this is going to tell us when we need to do our part. So we're old school. We still like paper. We still like writing things down on a piece of paper. And so when the student would need to hand in their senior reflection form, their purple form, and this yellow form at least 2 weeks before their earliest deadline. So many students are applying what's considered early action. And I know we didn't talk about those deadlines yet, but early action is non-binding, and you don't have to make the commitment to go. It's just an early deadline. It's typically November 1st, November 15th. For a lot of colleges, they offer that. So if a student is, their first deadline is November 15th, then ideally the student would bring the completed yellow form to the counselor by around November 1st or earlier. So I have students who are going to fill it out, and they're going to drop it off next week, far earlier than when they actually, their application deadline is, and that's totally fine. And once the counselor receives this form, the yellow form and the purple form, we get busy. We get, writing the letter, we review the transcript, we make sure the documents are uploaded. There's other forms that we have to do online that are affiliated with the Common Application, so we take care of that. And I might actually send my documents far earlier, or certainly at a different time when the student submits the application. That's very typical. So the deadline that you have, you're never going to wait for me or Mrs. Knapp or any other counselor, and you're not going to wait for your teachers. Sometimes it feels like, oh, well, my teacher didn't send my letter of recommendation and I can't send my application in. No, your application goes separate, my part goes separate, and then the teachers go separate. And we're really all very good about sending things by the deadline, as long as we get stuff in a timely manner. So we have occasionally, people forget or don't realize or just get wrapped up in things that they're doing, and they might come in a couple of days before their application deadline. Don't worry, we can figure it out, we'll handle it. But we ask for that 2-week buffer time because each of us has between 60 and 65 students in seniors, so we want to make sure we, give the application and the recommendation well enough time to, to make it perfect, basically. I don't know if there's anything else. Okay. All right. So there's a couple of things that I want to, so I kind of mentioned deadlines. So there's early action, so that's that non-binding, hey, I'm going to apply early, I'm going to apply by November 1st or November 15th, whatever the date is that early action deadline is that the college has. And then I'm going to find out usually between December 15th and January 15th from that particular college. And then I'm going to wait and decide, by May 1st. Fine. Early decision is a little bit different. So it's that early deadline, and you often find out early if you get accepted, but early decision has that binding agreement. So basically, the parent and the student are saying, we're all in on this one college for early decision, and if I get accepted, then that's the school that I will be attending in the fall. Not a lot of students and families are really prepared to make that decision. Some are, and that's fine. So we do have a form in our office because really an early decision agreement is, for the college, they're making that agreement with you as you are making that agreement with them. So if a student is accepted under early decision, then basically you're not applying anywhere else. That's it. It's done. So sometimes an early decision agreement is it's decided by the family that there's a change of plans. It's usually because of financial issues, but oftentimes for early decision, people have kind of already figured that out, typically. So we just ask parents and students to fill out the early decision agreement. And there is an extra step in the Common App if early decision is something that you wish to do. And we'll go over this again with students when we see them. So a regular decision deadline is usually January 1st, January 15th, February 1st, usually in that ballpark of time frame. So that's another deadline. If you didn't want to do the early action deadline, that's fine. You can wait until the regular decision deadline. And usually the college notifies students, usually it's late March, early April. So you are kind of waiting a little longer. We tend to encourage students to apply for those early action, non-binding deadlines because then you're finding out early in your senior year. It's nice to get that news. And then there's also rolling deadlines or rolling admissions. So it's basically saying, whenever you submit your application, we're going to roll out a decision usually within a month or so. So that is another option. So those are just some terms. Yep.
Could you just go into the early action, right? And I heard what you said, that you would encourage that. Is there any drawback to it? In other words, why wouldn't, if you know that's the school you want to apply, why wouldn't you?
So you mean early decision?
No.
Or early action?
I'm trying to understand really why.
Well,
if
yeah.
it's offering early action, other than just having more time to fill everything out,
Right.
is there any drawback to doing it?
I wouldn't say there's necessarily a big drawback. I would say, statistically speaking, more students get accepted under early action and early decision. So students can wait for it doesn't mean that they're not going to get accepted at regular decision, but sometimes colleges are accepting so many students early, so they might not have as many spots for that when that regular deadline comes around. So that's something that we've seen.
So there are a couple of reasons you may not want to apply early action. One is you're actually not ready, that you don't want to rush the application and do a bad job on it because that looks worse to the college. If your application is ready, it generally doesn't hurt to apply early action. The only thing you want to double check is if a student has actually seen an improvement in their grades and you really want first quarter grades to be seen by the college before a decision is made, depending upon when that early action deadline is, they might be making a decision before we have first quarter grades available. So that would really be the only time that I would ask a student to maybe wait. But I might also reach out to the college and say, can we send first quarter grades and have them still considered even though the deadline is before we will have grades? Some colleges will, some colleges won't. Does that answer your question?
Was there another hand? Yep.
I guess I'm still confusing. I feel different. So if you're doing early decision, you get one school anyway. But early action, does that just mean you're getting everything in earlier, so you can do it for all of them?
So not all colleges have early action, but many do. So usually most colleges, they'll have an early action deadline, so November 1st, let's say, and then they'll have a regular deadline, say January 1st, and then they'll also have an early decision deadline. They might have all three. So then that gives the student, the family, the choice which deadline they wish to use. So the early decision comes with that binding agreement, and you can only do one school with early decision. You can still apply to other colleges if that early decision college comes back and says, hey, we accepted you. Now the student withdraws the application of the other schools that they applied to because they made the binding agreement with that one early decision. Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
But one of the advantages of applying early decision is that if you get in, you don't have to submit other applications. So that you may want to just apply to all of your schools, know that it's done and not have to worry about it, but you may want to apply to the early decision school and maybe a few early action schools, but maybe not apply to the 10 schools that are on your list. Wait to hear back from the early decision school as to whether you get in or not, because you might not have to submit those applications.
Yep. Does that help? Yeah? Okay. Okay, we talked about that. Let's see, what else do we have? So when students are creating their Common Application, and some have already done that and some have yet to do that, and that's totally fine, we encourage them to do that on their Chromebook, because then you can save, the username, which is typically, it can either be a personal email, it could be a school email. If you're using your Chromebook, as we all know, there's limitations to the Chromebook and access to certain things, so it's kind of almost easier if you use your school email, because then if the college is emailing you back, oh, send us your first quarter grades, or oh, we got your application, or whatever information they're connecting to you about, then you'll get that on your Chromebook email, your school email. If you're using a personal email, that's totally fine. You just won't be able to access it from your Chromebook. So just something to keep in mind. So that's something that you want to pay attention to.
Check your spam.
And always check your spam folder, because sometimes things obviously just get lumped over there sometimes. So one of the things that students will be getting soon is their transcript, their unofficial transcript, their senior transcript, and we're going to load it into Naviance in that section where it's document shared with me. So it's in the right-hand, I think it's still in the right-hand corner, because Naviance changed.
More or less.
Well, anyway, it's under About Me, and then it says Documents Shared with Me, and then it will show the senior transcript. So it'll give you a chance to look at that. It'll show GPA information, both weighted and unweighted. So that's something that you can pay attention to. If you see anything that doesn't look right, or there's, extra information that shouldn't be on your transcript, sometimes odd classes get, loaded on for some reason, and they shouldn't be. We can fix it. That's not a problem. So just, you'll look that over. We have about 350 students in our 2024 class, so when you're filling out your application, that's something that you're going to make note of.
Yeah. When you're reporting your average, your overall GPA, any place, you're reporting your unweighted GPA. We provided weighted GPA just to give colleges a little bit more context, but that is not an official GPA. And it's important, we are reporting your unweighted GPA, so you should be reporting your unweighted GPA. Otherwise, the discrepancy is going to raise a red flag. So if you have any questions about that, please double check with your counselor. We have a question.
Oh, yep.
If a student only has like 1 or 2 years here, how does the higher school transfer, does it factor into the other one?
Yeah, so if your child attended another high school and then has transferred to Guilderland, so on the high school transcript, the Guilderland transcript, it will show, 9th grade at Saratoga, 10th grade at Saratoga, and then it will show, 11th and 12th here at Guilderland. And then also on the Common Application, it actually asks, what's your high school? So the student puts in Guilderland High School, and then it asks for, did you attend any other high schools? And then the student has to indicate that as well. So it's possible that the college might say, we want the transcript from Saratoga, so you would have to contact Saratoga to get the transcript to be sent. But hopefully they would just accept the one from Guilderland that has the same exact information on it anyway. But yeah, that's how that's typically handled. Yep. Yes.
Can you tell us how you convert these numeric grids they did into GPAs?
The GPA is just reported on the scale of.
Yeah, so our GPA is out of a 100. So it's not out of a 4.0 scale, it's out of a 100 scale.
Because all the schools listed on a 4.0 scale.
Yeah, you can calculate a GPA on a 4.0 scale. But when we report things on the Common App, it's out of the 100 scale because that's our grading system. So they'll accept it. They understand. In fact, on the Common App, it gives a variety of ways of what the scale is, and 100 is one of them. So that's how we do that. Yep. What's the equation for 4.0? It's
A 95 is basically a 4.0 and a
Yeah,
95 is
so,
basically
right.
a 3.0.
Yeah.
Repeat that.
Yep, so a 95 95 and higher is basically a 4.0, and then 85 is a 3.0, and then a 2.0 is 775, so. And a 1.0 is a 65, so. Yes. I'm sorry? Yes. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, and there is a link, but so the federal government hasn't completed the application yet, and it's not available, but we think it's going to be available maybe December. Yeah. You'll submit it after, because you can't submit it now, because it's not available. Yeah. Usually there's a question on the application, oftentimes where it says for the student, do you plan on applying for financial aid? So, they would check off yes, but you can't do anything until the application is available. And we'll have evening programs to help with that. Yeah.
The action in the regular application is, I think the accepted rate will increase. For example, let's say if you put early decision, that will change to 50% or 45%, whereas regular will be 10 or 15%.
Typically, colleges do get more applications during the regular application period, so that the rate of acceptance may be higher for early decision or early action, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a better chance of getting in early. Sometimes it does, but sometimes they're more selective early because they know that they've got a lot more applications coming, so that they don't want to fill their class with the early action, early decision applications. The financial aid deadlines are not necessarily the same as the application deadlines. So when you are checking out what the application deadlines are, double check on the websites what the financial aid application deadlines are, because they are not necessarily the same. And if you're applying early action or early decision, the deadline for the financial aid forms may be earlier than the regular deadline for financial aid, if that makes any sense. But let's say that the deadline for early action is November 1st. The deadline for your financial aid forms, not the FAFSA because it's not ready, but if they require the CSS profile, that might be November 1st or November 15th, when their regular deadline isn't until March. So just watch deadlines carefully.
Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? So generally speaking, we really encourage students to be kind of done with the college applications about Thanksgiving time, early December time, you know, whether it's a regular decision deadline in January or February, because otherwise you're just kind of like waiting on something, you know, you're waiting to do your essay, you're waiting to finish, you know, filling out the rest of the application. So, you know, sometimes it just kind of gets pushed off, and then all of a sudden you're in a mad dash to try to get it finished, and, you know, so we just encourage, if you have enough time between now and, you know, the end of November, early December, and of course, if you're applying for an earlier deadline, you'd have to back that up and, you know, submit it obviously earlier, but just keep that in mind, generally speaking. One of the things that, I hope I'm not going to mess this up. It's very possible. So when students ask for a letter of recommendation from a teacher, they're going to ask, the teacher says yes, and then something that they have to do on their common application is they have to do something called the FERPA. So the FERPA is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. And basically, you have to let the person know, the recommender know in advance before they write and send a letter, what the student's intentions are. We always recommend students to what's called waive your right. So waive your right to access means you have no access. So human nature as it is, we're all curious, we all want to know what's in the letter of recommendation, right? But you're not going to see it. And you have to be comfortable with that, because that is really the process. Now, there's two options. You can waive your right, which is what we recommend, or you can say, I don't waive my right, which is you would be seeking access to the letters of recommendation that have been written about you, but not until you actually go to college. So when a student waives their right, that lets the college know that you trust the person that you've asked, you're confident in what they have to write about you, and they send off their letter to the college admissions person, they read it, and they put it in your file. By not waiving your right, it doesn't mean you're not going to have a good recommendation, but the college admissions person who's reading your application might be saying, why did this person not waive their right? What are they concerned about? Is there something that they, you know, are worried about that teacher, you know, saying in the letter of recommendation? So I want you to know that this is part of the application process, and we go over this with the student. We explain what it means. We tell them what we recommend. We don't tell them what to do, but we just advise them that way. So I thought I would just mention it generally, because sometimes there's questions about that, and there's an assumption made sometimes that if a letter is written about you that you're going to get a copy. So historically speaking, you don't. Unless you don't waive your right. So, and again, that access wouldn't happen until the student is in college, and the college would then be, you know, either have those records and share it or not. You know, so just so you know what that is. Did I mess it up?
No, that was
okay,
perfect.
Good. It's just, you know, it's just something that you never really had to deal with, you know, from the student perspective, you know, waiving your right, not waiving your right, what does FERPA mean, all of that kind of stuff. And this will be a process moving forward. So if your child is eventually going to, you know, medical school or law school, it's the same concept, it's the same thing, so.
Are they doing this in Naviance, waiving the right, or?
It's actually on the Common application, and then what happens is, once that is done, then we actually match the Naviance account with the Common App account, so when teachers are writing the letters, they can see, oh, you know, Johnny waived his right, or Johnny didn't waive his right, so,
Do it on each, well, they do it in the Common App, so it applies to every school they're applying to.
correct, in the Common App, yeah. And so some colleges don't use the Common App, but they still might have that same kind of a section on the application. So, yeah, just something just to be aware of, and that's just part of the process.
I'm going to try to log in, I'm not sure it's going to work.
Okay. So one of the things that I didn't have to worry about, and Mrs. Knapp didn't have to worry about, but when we were in high school, we didn't have social media. We had notes, we took notes, and we passed them along. And they're gone, nobody has them, they're, you know. Social media is a little bit different, as you all know. Social media doesn't go away, it's forever, so you just want to be thoughtful and careful, kind of like some of the assemblies that we've, oh no, seniors haven't heard their assembly yet. But you've heard the same message before, so you just want to be thoughtful and careful with your social media accounts. These are things that actually colleges, when we go and visit colleges and talk to admissions people, boy, they're awfully young. So they're in their 20s. You know, their social media is just as active as probably your social media. So they're very in tune with social media, and they often will check students' social media. So just generally, just be aware of that. That is something that you just want to pay attention to. Sure.
Second, because it
Yep.
actually worked. Okay, so this is the Common application, and if you click on a college, you have to do it once, and then it is good for all of the colleges. I just have one college in there right now, so I would complete the release authorization, and this says, I understand what Mrs. Murphy just explained, and then I'm going to try not to do it. This basically gives us permission to send out your transcript, then here's where you waive or do not waive, and then you have to check a box that says you understand you can't change your mind after you submit it. The student types in their name, picks the date, and then hits save. Actually, this has to be completed one way or the other, it doesn't matter which way, before it will link with Naviance. So hopefully that makes it a little bit clearer.
And you can, you know, you can see this online, so you can read more particularly what the explanation is. I think I, you know, shared basically the essence of what it says. So one of the things that it doesn't happen often, but it does happen, is colleges are paying attention to grades all year. So this year is just as important as last year, 10th grade, 9th grade. So they are going to look at seeing how you're doing right to the very end. And we have to send a very final transcript after graduation, and it will have the average, you know, the final average of all of the courses that you've taken. So they do look at that. So, you know, so hold off until summer or the very last week of whatever. You're probably not taking Regents exams, or very few. Hopefully your final exams will be far done well before graduation. So you definitely want to take this year seriously. They are paying attention to grades, so just be aware of that. All right. Make sure.
NCAA just a little bit.
Sure. So some of our students are athletes, and they are looking at participating in their sports at the college level. And one of the things that has to be done is completing the clearinghouse, the NCAA clearinghouse for Division I and for Division II schools. So this doesn't really apply to a ton of students, but it will apply to some students. So you want to keep that in mind, that that has to be done, because the college can't have you as an athlete. They have to clear, NCAA has to clear your transcript, and, you know, before accepting you, there's the student end of things, the academic side, and then there's the athletic side, which is NCAA. So, any questions about that? Okay.
I have a plea.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I have a plea. I don't know where Mrs. Murphy or Ms. Galarno or Ms. Kaplan stand about this, but please do not submit your application until we have spoken. Once it's submitted, we can't make any changes. So especially like with the Common App, the education section is a little bit confusing, like the question about the 4.0 versus the scale of 1 to 100. And there's just some things that are a little bit confusing, and I want students' applications to look at the best that they can. So please do not submit anything until we've had a conversation.
And piggybacking on what Mrs. Knapp has said, so we do our initial senior meeting with students. It's about a half hour. It's a little long, and we apologize for that. We're just going through and getting things all ready for the student. But students can come in as often as they want. We're happy to work with them. You know, we're not going to fill out the application, but we can sit there with them and give them some suggestions or, you know, wordsmith things that they might have trouble explaining. We're happy to do that. I like the idea of, you know, looking something over. It's helpful just to see if we missed anything or if something could just be filled in a little bit better. I really had a good thought and then I lost it. Darn it.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking, like often with the education section, a student will just put in courses that they are taking this year that are for college credit. So they list that they're taking 3 courses. Well, that tells the college that they're only taking 3 courses their senior year. They're supposed to put in every course that they're taking this year. But I understand how that's confusing to people. So it's that kind of thing that it's just, let me look at it first, please.
Okay. It's gone.
Sorry. Okay.
No, you know, like 50 plus, that's what happens. You just lose it. So, okay. If there's any other questions, we're happy to answer them. I think we've covered the vast majority of stuff, and you're always welcome to contact us, call, email. We're going to have those evening programs, after-school programs, if you wish to come in. That's also going to be available as well. So thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you.